Okay, thank you. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna,
Arjuna and Sankalpa Mataji are here also.
Oh, nice. Okay. Haribol. Jai. So shall we get started then?
Yes,
That's fine. Okay. Jai. Everyone, Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Good. So welcome everybody to our discussion for Bhagavad Gita. We're in the midst of chapter 3, which is called Karma Yoga. And our purports are presented by Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, Spiritual Master, and ISKCON founder Chari for the Hare Krishna movement. And although we don't go through those purports much, that is for your doing on your time. But we're going to be zooming through with the verses as we have been. So let's look at chapter 3 then, and Karma Yoga. We left off at verse 35, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, we were concluding that segment under the heading of do what is natural to you in Krishna's service, and concluding with the statement that it's very dangerous to tread into other people's services or prescribed duties. Better to do one's own prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty. For to follow another's path is dangerous. So now we're moving over into another segment. And one of the most prominent questions that Arjuna asks Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is this one, text 36. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So it is a question, and he's wondering what is it that makes it difficult for us to move forward in our pure life? Why is it so complicated sometimes? What is it that stands in the way? And basically, he's asking, what is our enemy? So we're calling this whole segment, the series of verses from here to the end, identifying the enemy. Okay? So we all know what it means to have friends, and we also know what it means to have enemies. When you're a young child growing up, And you probably experienced that in the schoolyard. You have natural friends, and then you have those that might give you a little bit of a hard time, what we call bullying. So it's not very nice, but to encounter such individuals, but it is part of life. So the contention is that if you do develop your strong Krishna conscious foundation, then you can handle any situation and practically deal with anybody. Cope. You learn to cope better. So let us look at verse 36. Could somebody please read that one to give the answer, Krishna's answer? Okay, I think that was 36. We're moving on to, the Supreme. Here it is. Okay, would somebody like to read that for us?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world."
Right. So it's very plain, clear, and simple what it is that's holding up our spiritual progress. And we can actually say it is desire. Desire that is distinct from the desire to serve Krishna. When it becomes self-desire, then that's the stronger word is lust. In Sanskrit, it means kama. And it is connected to rajas, the mode of passion. It's actually considered to be where lust is born, is from the mode of passion. And it is also regarded as this lust or desire. It's all devouring. It's very consuming. And it can be found in different places within the self, which we will look at. Okay? So we all know that even when we're chanting serious japa, or we try to do so, good old Mr. Lust will try to come in and stand in the way of our progress, like a wall, practically. And we're going to explore here in this chapter that where we can find this lust, how it's manifest, how it comes in, how it affects us, basically. Yeah. So we are, so that was 37 that we read. Krishna gives his answer. So now let's see the effect that lust has on us. Text 38, if we can get somebody else to read that, please. Would Miss Tampa read that for us? Okay,
I'll read it.
If she's not there.
As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust.
Right. So you can look at this in different ways. Every individual is influenced by desire or lust more than someone else. And then we can also view this statement from the point of view that that lust attacks us at different times and comes more forceful under certain circumstances than others. So I think we all have that kind of experience, and therefore there's these visuals, if you will, or these images are very good for kind of like for our optics to understand. If you leave the house and you come back after some months, you know that your mirror may be covered by dust, especially if you have the window open. Or if you have the mirror in your bathroom and you tend to spit a lot, the mirror gets covered so you don't see your clear image. It's time to get the Windex out. Okay, but your clear image is not seen because of a covering. And this is compared to lust, which covers our ability to see properly. Okay. The other example is given as fires covered by smoke. I was once in a fire in a hotel, and you couldn't really see the fire for the smoke because the smoke was so thick and enveloping that you couldn't see the very bright flames. And oftentimes it's the smoke that may cause someone to gag or to choke, rather, and some people even die from the smoke before the flames may get at them. Heaven forbid that will happen to us. But that's a degree of covering over. What is Srila Prabhupada explains, and the Acharyas explain that when the embryo is covered by the womb, when we're in our mother's womb, then naturally there is you're very let's say blocked from vision. You're very obscure. So these visuals that are described here give us a good idea as to how we get clouded over by lust, which is born of rajas, passion, and which is has an all-devouring effect on us. Now, this might be a very discouraging statement by Krishna, because everyone is taxed by lust. So here we have God saying, listen, you're not going to move ahead. You're not going to make your grades if you have lusty desires. But Krishna always has something comforting to say about anything that would appear to be on our attack. And he says that I am lust, I am desire, which is not contrary to Dharma. So we can look at that for a minute. When we say Krishna is lust, he says I am sex, which is not contrary to religious principles. That means that when lust is projected by following Dharma, codes, regulations, Prabhupada uses the word regulative principles. This helps us to curb lust, or to channel it, or to dovetail it properly. So we need not to be discouraged and say, I can't do this because your books say there should not be any lust. Well, Krishna says, yes, there is lust. To just use it properly. Is that okay for everyone? Let's look then at 39. If somebody can quickly jump onto that verse, someone else, and read that for us and help us.
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire.
Oh my God, here's another what seems to be a very discouraging verse. Eternal enemy? You mean I can never live without lust? I mean, it's always going to be like a guillotine ready to drop on me or follow me like a shadow? Well, actually, there is some hope here, because if we follow our natural biological clock, meaning the way the body works, when we get a little older in our life, our oomph, or that pushing, that urge, sexual urge, tends to become a little bit calmed down. And so finally we can say, oh, wow, what a relief, okay? But the tendency to want, to desire to enjoy in this capacity may stay for some bit. So what we want to do is try to channel our love towards Krishna. Try to direct it to the Supreme Person who has all the unique qualities of attraction. Krishna means the all-attractive one. And we should get solace from that. It is said in the Shastra that one way to help yourself with this lust principle is to look at the curved eyebrows of the Supreme Lord. So next time when you're looking at Krishna, Radha, you look at their curved eyebrows, and it's supposed to help in some way. I think that another little trick too is when we have desires that tend to be a little bit fired up. At the end, it's very intense. One thing to do is to, as I mentioned before, hammer that mridanga, or go into some cold water, or look in the sky. Look in the sky, that blueness and those clouds that are there. It does have a strong tendency to calm us down. So I would say that this is something that I'm just giving some practical application on how to deal with the lust factor, apart from grabbing your japa beads and chanting or something like that. I think there's lots of techniques. We can probably write a list of 108 ways to help calm down this all-devouring sinful enemy. Okay, so we're going to look now at, I believe we're on 40. Right?
Yes, Marge, I just had a question about that. So is it just referring to, I guess, those sexual urges, or is it talking about like lust in general, meaning like lusting after, whatever one sees in the world? Is it like a dual thing, or does it have that specific reference?
When we look at some of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we say it's Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami. Kami means lust. And he's talking about the desire for moksha or becoming one with the Lord. This is more in a spiritual context. We talk about material context. It is bhukti. That means sense gratification, the physical, the sexual. Bhukti siddhi, the siddhi kami means the desire to get attention from others through your feats of magical things. Let's say you're a super dancer, or let's say you're super fast at driving, or let's say in a more spiritual context, it would mean performing mystic siddhis, learning to become smaller than the smallest, or larger than the largest, or to be able to do some amazing, let's say, mystical feats, such as burying yourself in the ground with your actually head down, legs up, and being immersed like that. And there's something like we sometimes talk about Jesus walked on water, and some of us appreciate that this is a mystic city to become lighter than the lightest. And so I would think to take it all in is okay. Lust is what checks us from making spiritual advancement. So if you want to be known as a great yogi, that is also a kind of a lust. Getting like, let's say, the lust for attention, the cry, the call for attention, love from others, because a lot of people just don't have it, or they're deprived, or they feel, I don't have enough, I need more. And when the attention goes to the individual as opposed to Krishna. So to answer your question, everybody can, when we talk about lust or desire, it usually refers to sexual, but lust can also be extended to the desire for profit, fame, adoration, distinction, those kind of things, prestige. Those are also forms of lust, but subtle forms of lust. So I think we can take the whole globe of lust in here. Most of us have to contend with all of the above. Does that answer the question okay?
Yeah, Maharaj.
All right.
Text 40?
So what's really important here is in verse 40, right? That's what we're looking at. Lust can be found in the senses. Everyone agreed?
Yes.
Yeah. Lust can be found in the mind.
Yes, yes, yes.
We have certain anticipations, we have certain thoughts, fantasies, let's put it that way. Mental fantasy. Sorry, my teeth are creating a problem for me. Fantasies. Yeah. And also in the intelligence. The intelligence can also there can be an element of lustfulness. Like people also use intelligence in order to attract people to themselves for the sake of lusty anticipations. So do not limit lust to the body, but it's on all levels. And because we can see and understand the locations of the enemy, therefore we can make an attack. Let's say you know the enemy's coming and you try to make a counterattack, but you don't know exactly where they are. Are they riding in the hills? Are they tucked behind the hills, behind the trees? Are they in aircraft? Are they in the water, sucking, air through a tube, where you can't see them? Where does the enemy lie? And so now we know it's everywhere. So it means there has to be an all-out attack. And therefore, what's beautiful about Bhakti Yoga is that it's an all-encompassing engagement in a way to make an attack on this lust. So therefore, we have Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, which means 9 processes of devotional service. You hear, you chant, you recall, you remember the good things, spiritual things. Smaranam, Padasevanam, take up humble services. Arjanam, which means to engage in arti, honoring a great, sacred image. Vandanam, which means to offer prayer, communicate with Krishna, communicate with his devotees, through prayer. Dasim, which means to take a servant's role. It's much like a padasevanam, like taking a humble position. And then we also have Sakyam, which means to befriend the Lord, make friends. And that's always very stimulating. Making yourself feel good by making friends, establishing good, strong devotional friendships. And then finally, Atmanivedanam. All those different processes are very engaging to the entire body, mind, intelligence, and senses. So that's the formula, 9 processes offered by Prahlad Maharaj. So let's look at the enemy and let's look at verse number 41 to see if there's anything more we can do with these senses that are wild, okay? So we're looking at actually 41. We're looking at 41. Have we got it there? Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin lust by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So you see the point about regulating your life. When you get into a routine, like a beautiful routine, not a dry, dull routine, like we see people go to the office. But you get into a spiritual routine. You start off the day set like same time every day if it's possible. Follow a regulation of sadhana, a little bit of reading, some chanting, some japa. If possible, turn into a musical chant, and offer your food. And this would just regulate your habits and make them all devotional. So that what lust tends to do is to steer you off course and say, hey, you've been at that for so long. Come on over on my side. You need a breath of fresh air. So the regulation is really like our kind of liberation. And at the same time, while we stick to a schedule, there are times when natural times, physical, organic times, when we will be thrown off a little bit, like in the case of illness, or you might have to travel and it takes you away from your regulated sadhana. Well, don't be too, don't go off the deep end just because of that challenge. Keep yourself regulated as much as you can. So there should be a sense of uneasiness when you go a little off course, and the senses will naturally try to lure you away from this regulation. So it's people who have a regulated life. They usually have a better physical self. They have a better, they're healthy, wholesome. Their mental outlook is a lot stronger. You feel more safe. You feel more secure because you've been on this same trail all the time. And it's really like training. Let's say if you want to get into boxing or something like that, the training is really important, and to be regulated about it, and to listen to a trainer. And this way, we can excel in this area. So Prabhupada always emphasized regulation, regulative principles. And he did that because he saw that his students, his first disciples in America and the Western world, they weren't so disciplined. So he said, you need discipline, and then you have a foundation from which to work from. And I find that people who are not so disciplined in their background, it's very hard for them to get there. So if somebody can start young, as Prahlad Maharaj was saying to his classmates, start Komaram Acharya Pragyo, Dharamam Bhagavataniya. Start when you're young. Start better now than later. And of course, better now would have been earlier. So it's nice to train ourselves in that way, and without putting too much strain on children. That is, if we're parenting, give them a little bit of regulated life. Prabhupada gave this kind of prescription. He said, when a child is up to 5, you let them do so much what they want to do. Let them have a blast, But when it comes to about 5 years old, that's the starting point of just taking on some discipline. So if parents let their kids have some room in which to work and have fun, but at the same time have some parameters, tighten up those parameters a little bit, usually about the age of 5. It usually works really well. Okay, it says you can curb this enemy by this process of regulation of the senses. Okay, the senses are like wild animals, and wild animals, you have to watch out for them. They'll give you trouble. Okay, so 42. 42 is very interesting. I would actually consider that it's one of my favorite verses. And you might want to memorize that one if you're into memorization.
From here.
Okay.
The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
Indriyani paranyahur, indriya paramana, manasastu parabuddhi, yobuddhe paratastu saha. So this is kind of like expressing the hierarchy of the self. Sometimes Krishna talks about the lower self, and he talks about the higher self. There is a dividing line. Like say, for instance, he says, when your mind goes out of control, gain control by the higher self. And the higher self is the intelligence and the soul proper itself. The lower self then is at the point of kind of like middle ground is the mind. And then there's the senses below that. And then we have dull matter, you know. We have just like the flesh. And then we have also the working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses. Lust definitely funnels through these senses, the hands, the legs, the feet, the rectum, and so on like that. And but it's considered a higher part of our hierarchy is the mind, which is considered sometimes the center of the senses, also called the sixth sense. Sorry, I'm lisping because of the preach in my mouth. Sixth sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth sense. And yeah, it is the pivotal place for the senses. So intelligence and the soul are higher self, mind, senses, dull matter are part of the lower self. Is that okay? So that's what this verse is actually expressing. The hierarchy of the Atma, of the self. Okay. Then let's look at 43, which takes us to the last verse of this chapter. Oh, here we go. I didn't know it was just around the corner. So somebody can read this one?
I'll come. Gopal will read, Maharaj. Okay.
Gopal, go for it.
Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should study the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.
Right, good. So I think also an important word here is atmana. Atmana, that refers to deliberate intelligence. That means be very focused and forceful in your conquering of the senses. So again, use the higher self to conquer the lower self.
Okay. It's
Maharaj,
Yes.
we come across two words in the scriptures where Prabhupada writes, the word transcendental and sublime. What are your thoughts, or what comes to your mind when you hear transcendental? Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Transcendental, one way to describe it is beyond the three modes of nature.
Okay.
When we talk about transcendental, there's total spiritual content. There's no mundaneness about it. No. To transcend means to go beyond. Like Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, Nishtara Gunya Bhavarjuna, Arjuna, go beyond. And go beyond the three modes of nature. And the Vedas mainly deal with Triguna, the three qualities or the three energies. So Arjuna is being told by Krishna, please go beyond this, the transcendence. And so when we talk about sublime, I guess somebody can look up the actual meaning, definition of the word sublime. It usually refers to something that's quite beyond our regular mundaneness. No. But this verse here, 43, it's a real nice wrap up And it does give us hope, because it does say, conquer the enemy. It can be done. And here's how you do it. Okay, so it leaves us on a beautiful note. Chapter 3. So we've gone through this karma yoga. Karma again means action. Yoga means to connect with the Supreme. So let's connect with Krishna through our actions by the use of deliberate intelligence. Okay, using the higher self over the lower self. Somebody's helped us to find out the word sublime. So we are looking at the noun says the sublime, the realm of things that are sublime, the quality of being sublime, the greatest of supreme degree. Oh, that's very good. Ver is referred to as higher, to make higher, nobler, or purer, more pure. That word sort of resonates with us. Let's go to the adjective. Adjective, elevated or lofty in thought. Yeah, so it means to think high and to do high, to be noble, to be lofty in all we do. Impressing the mind with a sense of grandeur or power, inspiring awe, veneration. Okay, supreme or outstanding. Nice words. Like, I think with this group, we were talking about, Prabhupada described what is faith. And faith means a unflinching trust in something sublime, something spiritual. Okay, so we have chapter 4 then. Everybody ready for a new chapter?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
Haribo!
Yeah, Haribol. 3 down, a few more to go. All right. So this is called transcendental knowledge. That's the term that Prabhupada uses here. And it is a very good chapter. It's wonderful. And we'll look at the first 3 verses under the, giving us a little bit the history of how the wisdom, transcendental knowledge, was transmitted. Because people want to know, well, where did this philosophy come from? You know, who's responsible for disseminating it? And where did it all begin? I think they're natural questions, because transcendental knowledge continues to intrigue people all over the world for all times and will always be that way.
The biggest argument for people now is they say religion was made by man, or it was written by man.
Yeah, well, we're talking about something more than religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, religion oftentimes refers to showing some obedience to, you know, some principles or values. But we're talking now more strictly about wisdom, you know, and how wisdom was imparted, just like in, you know, who were the professors in the beginning. So let's draw a little bit of a line between religion and wisdom. If religion was created by man, okay, that's your interpretation. But anyways, we're talking about good old wisdom, common sense. It always was there, okay? But some people are responsible for taking it and sharing it with others. So the first verse, let's go through verse 1. And somebody can read that. If you like, somebody volunteer. Oh, you can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Mandalaram.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku.
Beautiful. So the answer is there as a history comes on. It was Krishna who's responsible for being the first instructor of this wisdom, and he gave it to the sun god, which people can identify with. It's one of the first heavenly bodies that you think of. you know, that powerhouse of energy, the sun. And it was the sun god, the personality, personification, you can say, of the sun, that was the first recipient. And then he in turn gave it to Manu. Manu is supposed to be like next in line from Brahma, one of the progenitors. You can say Brahma is one of the Manus. And so a man, Prabhupada says man or woman, came from the word Manu. And the wisdom was received at a very early stage in creation. Manu received it after Vivaswan, the sun god. And then in turn that went to Ikshvaku. And Ikshvaku is a great king who appeared in the Raghu dynasty, the dynasty of Ram. You know, that's been a big thing in the news lately. Ram's birthplace has been sort of regained by its followers, and they're rebuilding, putting up a structure as to where Ram was actually born, because the place was invaded by outsiders and they destroyed the temple and put up something else in its place. So this is actually kind of a great victory, you know, to have another place of pilgrimage and the actual birth site of Ram. Okay, so Ram's been around for a while, over 1 million years ago. So we're talking about the philosophy of life, science, the absolute truth. It's been around for an extreme long time. And so let's see what happens with it. We call this is a school, and it's called Parampara, School of Parampara. So let's look at verse number 2 in this chapter. Okay, so can someone read this one then?
This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost.
Beautiful. So here we have that term, parampara. That means a chain of teachers, or what we call disciplic succession. When a teacher receives a student, he may call that person a disciple. In Sanskrit, the word is shishya. It's kind of a Catholic term to say disciple. Prabhupada did use the word disciple. He often use the word students. These are my students. He also used that as well. And a disciple refers to one who takes on discipline, takes on, let's say, discipline in his or her life. And that is very necessary if you want to receive information properly. It means you have to have a life that's somewhat disciplined. Otherwise, there's just too many distractions. I very much sympathize with young people today because there's so many distractions. It's hard for them to wrap their heads around information, period. It's hard to educate people these days. Their attention span is, wow, just a few seconds, and they're of somewhere in another direction, you know, because their attention is on sense gratification. Yeah. So what happens is, in the course of time, in the school of transcendentalists, it's natural. It happens organically. Somebody falls off the rails, or someone's not so strict about transmitting the knowledge or following the knowledge. So then that knowledge gets buried. You can say maybe it goes underground. And in this case, it's called broken. And so, because it does get broken, it's apt to happen in this world of mass distraction, then it appears to be lost, and Krishna does something about that. Yeah. So time wears away things. Time wears away good things as well. Time wears away our body, right? Time wears away our intelligence. It also wears away the intensity of our senses, the sharpness, and it will dull our senses and our intelligence. So because that tendency for wearing down is very prominent in the material world, therefore, like a sharp knife has to come along and put everything back into a sharpened condition. And so Krishna will do that. So anyways, let's look at this. Let's look at verse number 3. If we can go ahead with that one. Arjuna, have you had a chance?
No, Rain Mataji will read.
Okay.
That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science.
Okay. So the qualification of being a student or being a disciple comes in these in the words of that you have to befriend the Lord, you have to be kind, you have to be open to Krishna, and secondly, you have to be devotional. Well, let's flip it around. Bhaktosime sakacheti. You have to be devotionally inclined, number one. Number two, you have to have a very friendly disposition. And it's on those two counts that Arjuna became qualified to be able to hear what Krishna had to say. Krishna said, you are qualified because you have these two particular credits. Okay, so we can always keep that in mind. We need to be always very, let's say, receptive to Krishna, open to Krishna, to what he has to say. And we also have to perform acts of devotion. Performing acts of devotion in the course of, or your daily course of learning goes well together, hand in hand. Like most yoga ashrams do that. Like in the case of Krishna and Balaram, they went to an ashram. And what did their guru do for them? Their guru told them some philosophical truths. The guru also had them to do physical things. Like Sanipani Muni, their guru's wife, said, I need you to go to the forest nearby and collect a few things for some ritual. And so the boys went out and they did physical things. Sometimes in yoga circles, they call that karma yoga. We're going to do some karma yoga. It means we're going to do some active things and not just sit down and do some Ashtanga breathing or pranayam, asanas and pranayams. But we're going to do some physical things. We're not just going to philosophize. We're actually going to do some things that will be pragmatic. Pragmatic. Okay. So it's when you have that combination and you have the right attitude that you can enter into the mysteries of this science. Okay, number 4. Anybody care? Okay, so anyways, I think we're at this dissemination of wisdom, the history of parampara, it's there. Now we're going to a whole new section where Arjuna comes in, where he has a pressing question and he wants it to be answered. He's trying to figure out figures. Okay. His question is, I have been around too long. You haven't been around too long, Krishna. We were born maybe around the same time. But how is it that you got to talk to Vivaswan long ago? Tell me a little bit about that one. So let's read that verse. And we're going to call these few verses, put them under the heading of Krishna's purpose, why he's come here. Okay, so now let's read the question. I'll take the opportunity. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Okay, that's his question. Next one. The personality of God had said, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. So with this verse, number 5, Krishna's answer encompasses the fact that Krishna remembers everything. And it's true, we have gone through many births together, but I recall them all. You left your memory back with the last body, but I go through different manifestations or incarnations, and I can recall every detail. Nothing is lost for me. There's nothing that I have forgotten. So Krishna is establishing his supremacy once again in this verse. Okay, so I think it's, I personally, Bahuni me yatitani. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. There's a difference between God and myself, okay? And this is one of them. Krishna remembers, and I tend to forget everything. That's one marked difference between us and the Supreme Personality. Any questions on that? Okay, then let's move along to number 6. Anybody like to volunteer on that one?
Mandala, you want to read?
Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Okay, good. This is one verse that when in the old days, we all got to learn this one very well. And this is establishing Krishna's sublime position and why we put it under the heading his purpose. His purpose here is to say these things, to remind us that he is different from us. While we share the same kind of emotions with Krishna, he still has some superiority over us and always will, has now, has in the past, and still is to this day. Okay. So, so his body never dissolves. We're going to get some other verses that express the same thing. And it's by his spiritual energy that he'll come. And we call that Atma Maya, by his own internal potency. He'll come again and again. That's what he's saying to Arjuna. I've come in the past many times, and I'll come again and again because of my internal potency. In other words, he's saying, you were born, but it's under different circumstances. Okay, any questions there? Now, what we're going to come to here, let's see how much time we have here. Time for 2 more verses. Okay, the 2 next verses are, I think, something you need to memorize. And it is, these 2 shlokas are known all over India, especially by people of Hindu birth. And there was a famous series on television to do with the Mahabharata. Has anybody ever seen that TV series that were so popular? I think it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purbi said she memorized this sloka when I was reading it. She's like, hey, I know that one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So there you go, you know, because in the beginning of the TV series, they quote this one. Yada yada dharmasya nirbhavati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyam. So this is probably one of these two verses together, 7 and 8, clearly define Krishna's purpose for coming to this world. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So whenever there's a lot of nonsense going on, Krishna tends to feel sorry and step in and try to help things. That's the moment at which he comes. All of the avatars that we hear about, whether it's the Das avatars or more, they always come when there's trouble. So somebody might say, hey, let's stir up some trouble and see God. Doesn't quite work that way. Okay, so I would just highly recommend that we learn this verse. And then finally, number 8, Paritharanaya sadhanam, vinashya chaduskritam, dharma samstapanarataya, sambhavami yuge yuge. So millennium after millennium, I appear, Krishna says. Why? To deliver the pious. That is, Parithanaya sadhanam. Sadhu means when somebody can cut through the material world, the mundaneness, and plow right through and not get enamored by it. That's the sadhu. So Krishna says, Paritranaya, I will deliver those kind of people, the pious people, and I will vinashya. I will do damage to the damagers. Duskritinam, miscreants. Kritina means meritorious, and dush means mischief making. So people who are meritorious for mischief making, they will get clobbered by Krishna. They will be subdued. That's the nicest word that we can use. So those are 2 reasons for his coming. And then there's a third one. It says, as well as to establish principles of Dharma. That's my reason for coming. So out of the 3, the most important one is that Krishna comes to be close to his devotee, to take care of him or her, and to pull them out of their trouble. Yes. Does anybody have any things anything that's on your mind as we wrap up? Number 8.
Maharaj, so Krishna says to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, he will appear. So then one can think, boy, I mean, how bad does it have to be that Krishna is appearing? Like, it's, sometimes so many cows are slaughtered, like in a systematic, very professional way, without blinking, without even thinking a minute about it, that there's anything wrong. And abortions and trafficking, like so many things done to human beings.
Yeah.
You wonder, when is Krishna interfering?
Well, there's an intervention. There is an intervention, and it's found in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's found in the Bhagavatam. Okay, so first of all, Kalera Dosha Nidhi Rajan. This is the notion of faults, because it's Kali Yuga. So Krishna comes, Kirtanad Eva Krishnasya. So he has come It's not that you have to wait for him. You don't have to wait for the Messiah. He's already here. He's here in the form of the power of the mantra. So we have to accept that that's the way he comes in this age. Yes, he's come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He also comes as Buddha. Buddha appeared in the Kali Yuga. He's also going to come as Kalki avatar. But some of them were here in the past. Some of them are yet to come. But let's look at what we have as his representation in the present. And that is through Kirtan. So, Kirtan has kind of a calming effect on people. It's just like let's go to downtown Alachua. Do they have any flower pots there in the downtown just to spruce it up a little bit? Do they have any, like say, is there any decorum? Is there any landscaping that happens in downtown Alachua? Are the trees, are the bushes pretty right in the downtown, smack in the downtown?
Little bit.
Okay, let's go to Gainesville.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's go to Gainesville.
Next time we will walk through downtown Alachua and you're going to notice.
I remember being in Alachua last year in June. We saw like 3 owls on the posts. But anyways, that was at nighttime. Okay, so what do towns do to get people's nerves to calm down? They put up flower pots and they put up sort of all kinds of various forms of greeneries and shrubs, and they manicure them very well just to calm everything down. So even though it's a harsh world, they say that the crime rate goes down when you do that in a town. So similarly, we are prone to do really negative things like child trafficking, drug trafficking, all kinds of nasty, horrible things, as Sankalpa was saying. But things become subdued by the implementation of chanting. And the public always says that. You people are so happy. You're happy because you like to play music. And it's a fact. It has a calming effect. There isn't anything that you cannot match anything up to it. When people sing especially from a transcendent position, it does have a very powerful effect on people. Yeah. So that, according to Shastra, is Krishna who has come to us here. Good enough?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Don't wait for a Messiah. Don't wait for the next incarnation. The incarnation is right at the tip of your tongue.
Haribol!
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you. So we'll see you all next week.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Maharaj,
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much. Hare Haribol.
Hare
Haribol!
Krishna. Hey, so Hare Krishna, everybody else, thank you. And see you all next week, the same time, same link. You can use the same link.
Perfect.
How to do the Zoom.
So where's